the radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Monday morning. I hope everybody's having had a great weekend. Looking forward to a fantastic week. Sorry about that. The streaming was, I don't know what happened there. Not sure why it didn't connect. Took a long time to connect to YouTube. I think we were on Facebook and Twitter for quite a while, but it seemed like YouTube struggled there. All right, but we're here. We're on. We've got a packed show today. I had to cut a bunch of stories. It was a very busy, newsy weekend, I guess. I don't know, and so we'll try to cover the stories that I've got listed here, and then some of the stuff I've pushed on to tomorrow. But then again, who knows by tomorrow what'll be the news break? So might try to go fast, but we will see. Let me just remind everybody that you can ask questions using the super chat. That's a way to support the show. And it's also a way to ask questions and get your questions answered rather than the topic I choose. And you can also use the sticker just to support the show. Thank you, Jonathan, for the sticker. All right, so let's jump right in. So we all know now who Oliver Anthony is. We've seen. I'm sure you've all seen the video of his song, "Rich Man North of Richmond." We've discussed it on the show. It was played during the Republican debate, and what is and the song itself became this anthem for kind of right wing YouTube show hosts or podcasters and so on, and yet Oliver Anthony himself is trying to run away from that image and run away from that completely. So. Really interesting. I mean, from everything I've read about him, he is a prime candidate for kind of a death of, or was before this has made him, incredibly successful. He was a prime candidate for kind of a death of despair. Indeed, he's been. He claims he's in his 30s. He claims he's been experiencing brain fog and getting chest pains. And the reason he uploaded all these songs onto the internet, not this latest song, but the reason he started uploading songs that he had written up on the internet is, I'll just quote him directly. Quote, "I was feeling like my body was starting to fall apart, and it got to the point where I was questioning how much longer I'd be able to be around and sing these songs and do this stuff. So I was like, well, let me just go ahead and start getting everything uploaded. So at least if, God forbid, I die of a heart attack in my 30s, there's some legacy there." Anyway, so this is a guy who was seriously depressed, suffering from serious anxiety, which was manifesting itself in serious health problems. He had been doing a bunch of different manufacturing jobs in the Carolinas and Virginia and different places. He had managed to save up some money and take some loans and buy some land in Virginia. He was also living out of a camper that, I don't know, cost him something like, I can't remember, I read this, $49 or something ridiculous like that. What happened here? All right. He's not political, certainly not right-wing, certainly didn't intend this to become a right-wing thing. I told you all along that this was more left than right. He's just disgruntled with his own life, disgruntled with the state of politics. He actually claimed that he was upset that the song was being used at the Republican debate because it was about the people up on stage. It was about Republicans. He was against them. This is on another. There was another interview where he did, and where this is right after the song became popular, and he was on Fox News, and he says, "Quote: We are the melting pot of the world, right? And that's what makes us strong, our diversity. And we need to learn to harness that and appreciate it and not use it as a political tool to keep everyone separate from it." So here's the poster boy of the far right anthem calling for diversity. I mean, yeah, there's nothing right. I mean, there is in a sense of the modern right wing, but there's nothing to embrace in this song. There's nothing positive about this song. And Oliver Anthony is a confused. He doesn't have a particular. He's not a far right guy. He's probably not a far left guy. He's just pissed off and he's upset. And he's upset at rich men. He's upset at politicians. He's upset at the working conditions. He's upset at wages. He's upset about his own life. And to turn this into a rallying cry, pretty sad of the right. Anyway, it turns out he's kind of one of these characters that you feel a little sorry for him, that his life has turned out this way. But there's no political agenda you get from once you read interviews with him. I mean, he's not, and he's not the poster child, intentionally at least. He's not intending to be the poster child for right-wing politics. On many issues, it seems quite the contrary. All right, let's see. Yeah, I mean, horrible out of Jacksonville, Florida. This weekend, a racist neo-Nazi, it appears, with neo-Nazi tattoos, who literally wrote a manifesto about his hatred of blacks. And talk about nihilism, right? Here's real nihilism. For those of you always asking me questions about nihilism, this is what nihilism looks like. It's a deep hatred that it ultimately has to express itself in violence, in destruction. In this case, he goes into a kind of a grocery store and kills the black people he encounters. I guess he killed one of them outside of the grocery store, and then picks the blacks to kill, lets the whites go, and shoots black people, and then shoots himself. The ultimate, so this is self-hatred, a hatred of existence, a hatred of life, manifest and excused, rationalized by, if you will, a hatred of black people that manifests itself in just an act of horrific violence, which then, ultimately results in taking your own life because you hate life. You hate yourself. Now that's what nihilism looks like. That's the manifestation of nihilism in the end, is that. And a full-fledged nihilism is rare, though there are nihilistic elements throughout our culture. Nihilism is as much a phenomenon on the right as it is on the left. It manifests itself in the kind of white nationalism, white supremacist, neo-Nazi hatred of other people. What? Because of their skin color? Really? But its source, ultimately, its source always is self-hatred. Its source always is hatred of self and hatred of reality and hatred of the fact that one doesn't know how to deal with reality. It shows. There's a lot of. I remember during. I always get this. The right isn't violent. The left is violent. Yeah, the left is violent. We certainly saw that in the summer of 2020. But the right not being violent? Give me a break. I mean, we're seeing case after case after case of mass shootings where people leave manifestos that are either anti-Semitic or anti-black or just anti-immigrants or anti-Mexicans or just brown people generally or whatever, but all motivated by hatred of others that is driven by what is associated with a right-wing agenda. The right is very violent, or at least elements within the right are very violent. And the rhetoric of the right leads to violence, just like the rhetoric of the left, the extreme left, leads to leads to Antifa. And there is an Antifa of the left, and there's certainly many forms of Antifa on the right. And the sole acts of violence, they might be sole act of violence, but there's an entire infrastructure in the background of white supremacist group, white supremacist magazines, white supremacist channels on, 4channel, 8channel, whatever it's called, Reddit, whatever, that cultivate this, that promote this, that encourage this hatred, encourage this self-hatred, encourage the attitude of, there's nothing that can be done. The world is just doomed to this horror, and people feel like the only thing they can do is lash out. Yeah, there is violence. There is violence on the crazy left, and there's tons of violence on the crazy right. And Jacksonville is just one more reminder. If you remember the kid who the guy who went into the monster went into that black church and killed black church. What was in Charleston? The guy who killed in the synagogue, the Walmart killing. There've been no end to them over the last 5-10 years, specifically targeting particular groups based on their religion, based on their skin color, based on something like that. So just another horrible reminder that the neo-Nazis and kind of the far-right violence exists all around us. All right, Vivek. So Vivek was on all the talk shows, of course, this weekend. He had lots of opportunities to make a fool of himself. Basically, he was asked on one of the talk shows, he was asked what he would have done if he had been Mike Pence on January 6th. And this is a great opportunity for him to solidify his MAGA credentials, to solidify his support for Donald Trump. In the hope, I guess, that Donald Trump is not going to be the nominee and that he fills in his shoes. This is to quote Vivek: "I would have done it very differently. I think there was a historic opportunity that he missed to reunite this country in that window, really reunite the country. What I would have said is, quote, this is a moment for a true national consensus, unquote, where there's two elements of what's required for a functioning democracy in America. One is secure election, and the second is peaceful transfer of power. When those things come into conflict, that's an opportunity for heroism." Yeah, which Mike Pence, I think, exhibited. Here's what I would have said. We need a single day voting on election day. We need paper ballots, and we need government-issued IDs matching the voter file. And if we achieve that, then we achieve victory, and we should not have any further complaints about election integrity. God. Really? This is your answer? He also talked about the fact that the election was stolen by big tech and the Democrats, basically. He went on in that same line of thought. And this is the thing about Vivek. He doesn't believe a word of that. So this is Vivek, not that long ago, in his book, writing about January 6th. Same Vivek. Throughout the entire book, he mocks January 6th. He criticizes Donald Trump as a sore loser. And he talks about the United States, including those protesters on January 6th, becoming a nation of victims. He writes, quote, "The Republican Party seems to be moving towards the position that all races it wins are legitimate and any it loses was stolen. It's just the preferred conservative brand of victimhood, a knee-jerk kind of sore losing, more common at playgrounds than great republics." This is Vivek. Talk about pathetic. Here's Vivek on Donald Trump not that long ago. Again, not right now. Would never say this right now, but not that long ago. Quote, but while Donald Trump promised to lead the nation to recommit itself to the pursuit of greatness, what he delivered in the end was just another tale of grievance, a persecution complex that swallowed much of the Republican Party whole. He wrote that. That's Vivek. So, yeah, he's changed his mind. I mean, people are allowed to change their mind, but isn't it convenient the way he's changed his mind? I mean, this is truly pathetic. And then on the Jacksonville shooting, he says, the reality is we've created such a racialized culture in this country in the last several years that right as the last few burning embers of racism were burning out, we have a culture in this country largely created by media and establishment and universities and politicians that throw kerosene on that racism. I've been saying that for years. I think that is a driving, sadly, a new wave of anti-black and anti-Hispanic racism in this country. Right? So, I mean, that's all in a sense true. I agree with it. But he never actually came out and said and condemned the racism and just the hatred and the horror of what the guy did in Jacksonville. It's true that this is ultimately the cause. Racism begets racism. There's no question about that. So he mixes stuff that's true and often good with just BS. BS. And you know, I was reading an article today about what the difference is between liars and bullshit artists. Liars know that there's truth, and they're trying to deceive you, but they know that there's a truth and there's a lie, and they're lying. And they realize that, and that's why they often feel a little bad about it. Maybe they feel guilty about it, or maybe they feel like they have to protect themselves, backtrack about it, or whatever. Like Bill Clinton was a liar through and through. But what we've got now is a generation of politicians who are bullshit artists. And what that means is, and this is Trump's contribution to the American political debate. Maybe truth exists out there, but they don't care. That is, what bullshit is not caring about truth. Not caring about reality. And therefore you say whatever. And yeah, it's a lie, but it doesn't matter. It holds no difference than anything else you say. It doesn't hold this versus reality, because reality, who cares? It doesn't matter. This is pure, true pragmatism, where reality doesn't matter, is insignificant. What matters is, will what I say achieve what I wanted to achieve? And Trump mastered this, and Vivek, I think, is following in his footsteps. What he really thinks doesn't matter. What is true doesn't matter. All that matters is what'll get him elected, maybe, what'll appeal to the Make America Great Again crowd, what'll get him the most visibility. I don't know. I don't know what drives Vivek. It's hard to tell what drives Vivek. Talk about, I mean, people who've mastered the art of bullshitting. I mean, following Trump, really as part of the Trump kind of bandwagon. Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson used to be a decent human being. He used to be able to tell the difference between truth and lie. I'm not saying he never lied, but he used to be able to tell the difference between the two. Well, I don't think he can anymore. I don't think he has the capacity to tell the difference anymore. I don't think he cares anymore. I just think reality doesn't matter. Truth doesn't matter. He's just going to say whatever. whatever he thinks will achieve whatever he wants it to achieve at the moment. Tucker Carlson went to Hungary, to Budapest, this last weekend, where he gave a talk. And he used the opportunity first to criticize the U.S. ambassador to Hungary, because the U.S. ambassador to Hungary dared criticize the Hungarian parliament for passing stringent anti-gay legislation that actually, comes very close to outlawing gay behavior and encourages people to tell on one another. So this is from the ambassador's words. It is impossible to see echoes of. It is impossible not to see echoes of this in your parliament's vote earlier this year to encourage neighbors to report to the authorities their gay neighbors raising children. So if gays are raising children, people are supposed to tell the authorities because it's illegal. Turning neighbor on neighbor conjures a dark past of covert agents and informants, of fear and betrayal in this country and this region that I do not need to recount. You have a museum for that. While this legislation did not become law, the fact that it was even considered, let alone supported by this government and passed by this legislature, is chilling. He's talking about its communist past. He could also be talking about its occupation under the Nazis. He could be talking about either one. Anyway, Tucker Carlson felt it necessary to go and defend the Hungarian honor against the American ambassador over LGBTQ. Right? He says, I'm not in the habit of apologizing for the United States. In fact, I don't think I ever have. But the behavior of the American ambassador to Hungary makes me want to apologize. It's disgusting and inexcusable. It's also so far from the norms of diplomacy in my country that it's hard for me to believe that David Pressman is actually doing what he's doing. But that was just kind of the warm-up. The thing that really made news with Tucker Carlson is what he went on to say. He talked about the fact that Americans hate Hungary. Maybe he talked about American elites or the American authorities hate Hungary. Why do we hate Hungary? Not because maybe it's authoritarian nature of Orban, not because maybe they've suppressed all independent media, not because, they are the one country in Europe that seems to be, mildly opposing the support of even the Europeans for Ukraine. Maybe not because, Orban's very friendly towards Putin. No, not because of that. Why do Americans hate Hungary? Some Americans. Why do I? Right. And do Americans even hate Hungary? Maybe they hate the leadership of Hungary. They hate Orban. But this is what Tucker Carlson said. This is a quote. They hate Hungary because it's a Christian country. Nobody wants to say it, but it's true. That is enough to incite our policymakers in the United States, and that is exactly why they hate Russia, by the way. So our policymakers, our intellectuals, our quote elites, hate Hungary and Russia because they're Christian countries. That's why. I mean, really? Really? Now, a number of people have made the point. I mean, first of all, this is just stupid. Somebody said whenever Tucker says, but it's true, that he's lying. That's true, I think, too. But here's some statistics from both Hungary and Russia in terms of how religious they are as countries. We'll talk about what Christianity has to do with this. Just 16% of Russians say that religion is very important to them, and just 7% attend worship services weekly. That would put it, if Russia was a state in the United States, that would put it as the most secular state in the United States of America. So by every measure, if you count how seriously people take their religion and how often they go to church, the United States of America is a lot more religious, than Russia is. When it comes to Hungary, 19% of Hungarians say that religion is very important to them, and less than 19% attend worship services weekly. Again, it would be more secular in California, more secular than Massachusetts, or whatever state you want. There is a sense in which we should hate Hungary over Christianity. But it's not because it's a Christian country, i.e., the people there are Christian. They are not. It is because both Russia and Hungary use as the moral justification for the particular government that they have, use as moral justification for the policies of their government, and use as a basis for their policies religion. That is, the problem with Russia and Hungary is not the religiosity of their people. They're not that religious. The problem with Hungary and Russia is the religiosity of their government and the refusal of their government to separate church and state. That is the use of religion in politics. That is the problem with Russia and Hungary. So yes, there is no separation of state from church in those countries. Yes, Hungary wanted to pass legislation based on religion that was anti-gay for no real reason. And yes, Russia has all kinds of laws that place the Russian Orthodox Church in kind of a superior position in the country. By the way, a few years ago, Russia criminalized missionary work and evangelizing of other churches, non-Russian Orthodox, outside of the Russian Orthodox. People have landed in jail for merely discussing their Christian faith, again, when it's not Russian Orthodox. And that's, by the way, from, if you don't believe me, you can check it out on Christianity Today, the link to that. No one hates Russia because it's Christian. Maybe because it invaded a country that was not aggressing against it. Maybe people hate Russia because the Russian regime executes its opponents. Maybe people dislike Russia because it flirted with some kind of democratic or elections, and then has basically rejected that for complete corruption. Maybe people hate Russia because it's ruled by a mafia. There are lots of reasons why people might hate Russia, but Christianity is not one of them. Again, maybe it's because Russia does not have the separation of state and church. So again, Tucker Carlson BSing his way through another public presentation. All right, God. All right, quickly. As you know, maybe you know, I don't know if you know this, but in the news recently, there have been a number of cases, both in Sweden and in Denmark, where people have gone out and burnt copies of the Koran. As a consequence of these burnings, there have been riots all over in a variety of different Middle East countries, specifically in Iraq and I think in Pakistan, where the Danish and Swedish embassies were attacked, and generally Muslims around the world claim to be super upset by the fact that the Quran has been burnt. Specifically last month, a video was circulating of a Danish nationalist burning a Quran, and hundreds of Iraqi protesters tried to storm the Danish embassy in Baghdad. You could ask a good question of why Denmark has an embassy in Baghdad, but put that aside. Erdogan in Turkey is threatening again to try to, stop Sweden from becoming a member of NATO because a Swede burns a copy of the Quran in Sweden. As a response, the brave, courageous, inspiring Danish government has decided to make the desecration of holy symbols and texts. They've decided to make that illegal. So you can't desecrate religious symbols. It wouldn't apply, by the way, to clothing, and it wouldn't apply to satirical drawings. So it wouldn't apply to the cartoons, but it would apply to, I guess, to burning of crosses, maybe. It would apply to Jesus, was it urinals with Jesus on them? It would apply to burning of the Torah or the Koran or the New Testament, Torah being the Old Testament. It would apply to any of these things, right? That is the solution. The solution is cowardice, not to stand up. And this is why, by the way, the Danes and the Swedes and the rest of Europe cannot assimilate the Muslim or any other population that comes into their countries, because they won't stand up for their own values. They won't stand up for free speech. They won't stand up for the rights of their own people. They capitulate and give in every time. And of course, if you do that, all that does is emboldens the violent. Right now, they're saying it doesn't affect cartoons. Why? Because if you remember, it was in Denmark that the famous Muhammad cartoons were published. And they don't want to appear anti-free speech. Cartoons, that's kind of accepted as speech. But of course, once you do it to religious symbols, why not cartoons? Why not clothing? Why not saying? Why not speaking? Of course, we already have extensive hate speech laws on the books all over Europe. Those, by the way, not to protect the sensibilities of Muslims, but to protect the sensibilities of Jews. I mean, that was all started. As bans against Holocaust deniers. So it's just horrible. I mean, the lack of respect for free speech, the lack of respect for individual rights, the lack of respect for individual autonomy, and really the willingness of Western governments to succumb and to give in and to just fold in the face of violence. And when you fold in the face of violence, all you get is more violence. And you're not bolstering your own culture, you're not protecting your own identity. All you're doing is giving in. You're losing. Islam is winning in Europe, not because of Muslim immigrants. Islam is winning in Europe because of the cowardice of the West, because the West are cowards. You know, I was thinking I should have, I should bring one of my Thursday interviews. I should interview Fleming Rose. I need to get in touch with him and interview Fleming Rose, the publisher in Denmark, in Copenhagen, who published the Danish cartoons in 2005. That would be an interesting interview and bring maybe some context into this. Okay, finally some good news, I think. I think this is good news. You know how there's this campaign to ban plastic straws, and there are lots of places now you cannot get plastic straws, and instead of the plastic straws, we have to use these horrible, just disgusting paper straws that fall apart, that just they get distorted, that you can never really finish a drink with them. You start, they're okay in the beginning, but even then they just don't feel right. They don't taste right, maybe, but they just get shredded, no matter how well they're made. So paper straws are disgusting and horrible. I mean, I am we should have a presidential candidate who runs on the platform of, passing a constitutional amendment that we can use plastic straws. Anyway, it turns out that in a study by a group of Belgian scientists, it turns out that plastic straws are actually, that paper straws are actually probably worse for the environment than plastic straws. Now, this is the best news I've heard in a long time. It turns out that the paper straws have to be, in order to make them work, in order to make them water resistant, they have to be treated. And that treatment embeds in the paper straws what are called forever chemicals. And it turns out that there are more of these forever chemicals in paper straws than there are in plastic straws. And it turns out, of course, the forever chemicals are these chemicals that you cannot break them down. They're just there forever. Although I think I did a show a while ago, and one of the news items was that scientists have figured out a way to get rid of forever chemicals. But anyway, that would, I don't want to do anything that might suggest that we should save paper straws. So it looks like by banning plastic straws and introducing paper straws, we are actually increasing forever chemicals and the pollution that they result in. And I am starting a movement to, in the name of the environment, to ban paper straws, because forever chemicals are clearly, have to be, no question about it, the worst thing for the environment possible, right? No? I don't know. I have no idea. They strike me as just the latest, greatest. Forever chemicals sound so ominous. It just sounds like the latest, greatest ominous thing to induce us to behave ourselves, to induce us not to destroy nature. They're artificial. That's the thing that we're artificial in the sense that they are recombined atoms, molecules that exist in nature, but recombined by man rather than recombined by nature, and that makes them evil and bad. I hate paper straws. What can I say? I am all in favor of returning to plastic. All right. Let's see. We only have 3 questions. We've done okay with the money coming in, but only 3 questions. So if you'd like to support the show and you'd like to ask a question, you don't have a lot of time to ask the questions. Also, some people have done stickers. Stephen, thank you. Wes, thank you. $50. Really appreciate it. Catherine, thank you. And of course, Jonathan Honing, thank you for the support. All right, let's start with Adam. $50, really appreciate it. Adam says, Vivek and all politicians are the embodiment of the gutless pragmatist in Atlas Shrugged and the Fountainhead. Hard to avoid Rand's genius when listening to these cowards. Yes, and it just constantly reminds you of the fact that all those critics who criticize Ayn Rand by saying she creates these caricatures, the evil people in Atlas Shrugged, they couldn't really exist, right? Well, here they are. They're just, our politicians today could be right out of Atlas Shrugged. They're just a perfect, pragmatist. Truth matters nothing to them, nothing. And Vivek, who had all the potential, and as I think the potential and the charisma to actually have a profound impact on American politics in a positive way, just disgusting what he is becoming. And he seems like he's getting worse by the day. He seems like he has to solidify his Make America Great Again. I shouldn't even call it that, because it's not about making America great again. As Vivek said about Trump, that he didn't make America great again. It's about MAGA. Let's just call it MAGA. Credentials at the expense of reality, at the expense of truth. And no, not everybody who claims to be a Republican is automatically better than Joe Biden. Sylvanos, what do you think are the odds the Koran burning in these countries is just paid actors stirring the Muslims or giving political power to Iran and the like? I guess there's potential, but I don't think so. I think there are plenty of, it happened in the United States. I think it was Florida a few years ago. In Europe, it's more likely because Muslims are more, particularly in Sweden, but to some extent in Denmark, Muslims in people's faces. I think there's a significant resentment against Muslims in Northern Europe. And so it doesn't surprise me. There are a bunch of right-wing people in Europe who would burn Korans easily. So I don't think so. I don't think it's. I don't think it is paid, but it doesn't really matter. Whoever does it, it doesn't matter who's doing it. Look, and I know for a fact that, for example, the Danish cartoons was not paid for. That is, the Danish cartoons were real. And they had a very profound political and cultural statement they were making. So they weren't even done just to incite. That's why I want to have Fleming Rose on. But the point is not that. The point is the cowardice of Western governments. That's the point. The point's not what Iran does. It's not what these demonstrators do in these hellish countries. The point is the complete and utter failure of Western leaders to stand up for Western values, to stand up for free speech, to stand up for freedom, for individual rights, to stand up for their own citizens' rights. That's the story. Burning of the Koran is insignificant. The fact that they riot over there is just expected. But the hate speech laws, and now these kind of laws that Denmark and Sweden are considering, just disgusting. Just disgusting. A real failure of the West. Real failure of the West. By the way, I never endorsed Biden. Ever. I didn't endorse Trump. Let's see. For the campaign, let's save the world for those evil, filthy things. Yes. Thank you, Shelley. Appreciate it. All right, we got one last question. We're still short about $100. If you, by the way, if you'd like to support the show, monthly contributions are really, really appreciated on Patreon. Patreon's a great way to support the show. And on youronbrookshow.com/support. And also, you can support the show by doing a sticker right now by asking a question, but you don't have a lot of time because Frank's is the last question I have. Was the Harding-Coolidge administration good from the start? I think so. I mean, I don't know enough about the history of the Harding-Coolidge administration to say unequivocally. I also have read things that suggest that, Harding and Coolidge were not very good on certain things. That is, they were very good at how they responded to the recession of 1920-21, but they were not particularly good on other things. Absolutely, so I don't know if they were good from the start, and I don't know how thoroughly good they were. I know that they were good with the recession of 2021 in a sense that they chose basically not to do anything in the face of a recession, and therefore they had a deep, very, very quick recession that the country got over the economy got over very fast in kind of a healthy way. But whether they were good other than that and throughout and how deep it was, I don't know. I don't know enough about the history. All right, guys, really appreciate the support from all the super chatters. Again, I'll remind everybody you can support the show on a monthly basis on Patreon, Yaron Brook Show, and on yaronbrookshow.com/support. You can also, if you're listening to this on YouTube later on, you can use the applaud button underneath to support the show that way. And of course, you can still, as long as I think the chat here is alive, you can still use a sticker to support the show. We've got a lot of people watching today, so I'm glad about that. I will see you all again tomorrow morning for another news show. Tomorrow night, I'll probably do a show, at least part of the show will be about a movie I watched this weekend, Golda, the movie Golda, which, so I will review that movie and then do a bunch of other topics as topic as well. All right, everybody. Thank you. I will see you all tomorrow. Bye, everybody.